Hello everybody, welcome to the Comic Game Movie Show. My name is Deshaun and today I am here to review Axel F. Foley, or Axel F., the fourth movie in the Beverly Hills Cops franchise. This will be the franchise that started in 1984 and it was Eddie Murphy's breakout movie. It was the first movie he got to headline and it was the movie that launched him into the stratosphere. It's probably his most iconic role, if we're being honest. Outside of Donkey, it's Donkey and this, you know. Outside of Donkey, Axel Foley is his most iconic live-action role, I would probably say. There are some other roles, but this one is the one. This one pretty much epitomized the 80s comedy action movie of the time. It's so crazy to think that the original person they wanted to play this role was Sylvester Stallone. And that is such a crazy thing to think, that Axel Foley could have been Sylvester Stallone. And Stallone's a funny guy. And he proved he could be funny back in the day. But not as funny as Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy in a time period with the Lethal Weapons, in, you know, Tango and Cashes, and all those kinds of movies. A lot of action comedy movies. This movie is pretty much, you know, there's an argument to be made that Beverly Hills Cop is the greatest action comedy of all time. There's a very big argument to be made. The sequel, Beverly Hills Cops 2, was a very good sequel. Not as good as the original, but a very good sequel. And the third movie is notoriously known for not being a very good movie. So, it's one of those franchises that you thought would be dead. But just like Bad Boys, just like Halloween and other films that have kind of like come around and had reboots and reinvigorated the franchise. Got a new Alien coming out. Bad Boys kind of showed that you can come back and do this. That you can come back and revitalize an old character. There have been talk for years about Lethal Weapon and Rush Hour getting sequels again. And Eddie Murphy is back in the lexicon now. You know, he's been back for a while now. He's in films. Not a ton of them, but he's in films, particularly on Netflix. So, I feel like it was only a matter of time. Once Eddie Murphy started picking up steam again as an actor, as an entity in the business again, once movies like Bad Boys kind of like worked out, it became abundantly clear that it's like, okay, I think something like Axel, you know, a sequel to the Beverly Hills Cop movies is a possibility. And here we are. Now, I was worried about this movie. When I first saw it announced, when I first saw the trailer for it, I was worried. I was like, this might be what I thought Bad Boys was going to be. Because I was worried. I was like, is this going to be some cheesy shit where it's just hard to watch? It's these old men doing these old things, doing their old tricks, and it's 2024 now, and shit that worked in the 80s ain't going to work now. But instead, following in the same vein as the Bad Boys for Life, this movie, Axel F., is both a nostalgia trick. It's not just a nostalgia trip, which it is a nostalgia trip. Don't get it twisted. It is a nostalgia trip, but it is also, how do I put it? It's doing it in a tasteful way. The characters don't seem too unrealistic to what they would be. They acknowledge the age of all the returning cast, including Axel himself. But the thing that benefits this film franchise a little bit more than it would benefit, say, a Lethal Weapon, even the Bad Boys and other movies, is the Lethal Weapon movies were more comedy first, action second. You know, I was thinking about this before I did the video is, if you look at some of the bigger, like, buddy cop, comedy action movies, like I said, Lethal Weapon, Bad Boys, Rush Hour, Tango and Cash, movies of that ilk, they all had one thing in common. Each of those movies had an action star in it. Will Smith, Mel Gibson, you know, obviously Jackie Chan. Each of those movies had an action star in it who provided the big action sequences. Not to say that the Beverly Hills Cop movies didn't have fun, big action sequences, but Eddie Murphy isn't an action star. He didn't go and do a bunch of action movies after the Beverly Hills Cop movie. Not really. He did some shit, but they were all in the same vein as the Beverly Hills Cop movie, which is comedy first, action second, because he's not an action star. So the Beverly Hills Cop movies leaned into what he does great. So Axel Foley as a character isn't this badass. He isn't this karate expert like Jackie Chan in Rush Hour. He isn't a former Black Ops operative like Mel Gibson in Rush Hour. He isn't this over-the-top action star with perfect accuracy and, badass moves like Will Smith in the Bad Boys movies. His bread and butter is that he has balls of steel, he's a great detective, and he is so charming, charismatic, and creative that he can talk his way in and out. He can think his way and talk his way in and out of situations. So it really revolves around his wit, his comedy, and his great detective work. So it lends itself for this character to be older because that shit doesn't go away. If that wit and great detective work and cleverness and having balls, all the attributes that make Axel Foley great just got better. And they kind of really do that in this movie where they kind of play it like, and they play this a lot in these sequels. They did it in Bad Boys for Life. It is not back in the day. You know, back in the day, you could be a cowboy, you could go out, you could catch the bad guy, and no one would complain about it because you caught the bad guy. Back in the day, we all understood you gotta do what you gotta do. Nowadays, the climate's different. You know, they don't mention modern day climate of, you know, police and the opinion of police, but they do kind of drop that in there as like, look, you can't just do whatever the fuck you want anymore, dude. Like, it's a different time. Back in the day, I would have just yelled at you. I'd have told the fucking, you know, whatever, the governor or whatever, like, hey, we caught the bad guy, made the bust, and everything would roll on. He's like, not anymore. It ain't like that no more, bruh. Like, now there's regulations. Now there's so much you have to go to. There's so many hurdles to do your job as a cop or for Axel. And the idea is you're a relic of the past. Like, you can't do those things you used to be able to do. And of course they play up the idea that in the time since we last saw Axel, he has had a kid, he has been married and divorced. And really, at this point in Axel's life, all he has is his job. His passion is catching bad guys. He's so good at it. He's so relentless at it. He's so focused at it. And in the previous Beverly Hills Cop movies, I don't really remember 3 all that well. I remember the first 2, not 3 all that well. But in the previous Beverly Hills Cop movies, it always felt like Axel was just always on. Like, you know, he'd walk in a room and just start, hey guys, what are we doing? You know, like he'd just pretend like he's been there. He'll bring the voice up. He'll charm someone. It always felt like he was always like that. But in this one, we kind of get to see behind the curtain because he's older now. So you get to see him like cut it off and cut it on. In the other movies, he's just always on. He was always Axel Foley, you know, charming, figuring his way into places. In this one, you get to see him cut it on, cut it off, cut it on, cut it off. You get to see him be, you know, like you get to see that, and you get to see behind the persona, behind the larger-than-life personality, and see a man who is lonely, a man who really doesn't have much, a man who has spent a lot of time, dedicated his life to something he believes in, and at the end of the day, his wife left him, his daughter hates him, all his friends are dying because he's getting to that age now, and that's something that's always scary. You know, that's a scary thought anyways when you get old. It's like when you start looking around and like half the people you know are dying, and not from getting shot or anything crazy, just natural causes. That's when you're fucking old. And it's basically what's happening to him. He's just looking around, he's just like, half my friends are dead. Like, I'm still here doing this. I go home to an empty fucking apartment. My daughter hates me because I abandoned her, maybe. Like, it's an interesting little thing they did with him. They did what you should do with a character like that, with a big character like that. Is life is weird. Life is weird, and like it's like he got this thing figured out, being this badass cop, you know, doing his thing, but he couldn't quite figure out the parenting part. But either way, the whole plot just revolves around his daughter, who's a defense attorney defending. Like, she finds out that she thinks someone's being set up, being framed. And she's accusing this cop of, she's accusing her of being of crooked cops. And of course, that puts her in hot water. So Axel has to come back to Beverly Hills, and they get everybody together. They get Taggart, they get Rosewood, they get Surge. Like, they get almost all the original cast together. And it's very fun. It's a very fun movie. The action sequences are fun. Eddie Murphy is amazing in this. Like, he slipped right back into that Axel Foley role like it was just easy, dude. Like, and sometimes you're worried that someone could be a parody of themselves, especially when you're talking about a character that's iconic. And he doesn't. He doesn't. He feels organic. He feels like an older version of Axel, which is what you have to do. Which is always the worry with movies like this, is that you're going to just try to pretend like this. That's the problem with the Liam Neeson, like, fucking Taken movies. It's like, Liam Neeson's like fucking 80. Why is he hopping fences and karate chopping motherfuckers? Like, I don't believe that shit. You know what I mean? Whereas here, like I say, since Axel's entire thing is him just being crafty, witty, and clever, he doesn't have to get in fist fights. He doesn't have to do any of that shit, you know? You just pop a motherfucker from across the room, you know? You can do that. At his age, you can still do that. But this movie ended up being a lot better than I expected. It was a funny movie. It was a fun movie. I think Netflix has another hit on its hands. I would give Axel F. I'd give it an 8. I'd give it a solid 8. It's a great sequel. Great sequel to those original movies. I would not be surprised if it's followed up with another sequel. It's #1 on Netflix right now. Granted, it just came out, but I think it's going to be #1 for a little bit. It's good to see Eddie Murphy back, too. It's really good to see Eddie Murphy back. He kind of disappeared for a while there. There's a couple actors and actresses who have just kind of like straight gotten out of Hollywood. But seeing him back in this role, it warmed my heart. It's one of my mother's favorite movies. She loved the Beverly Hills Cop movie. So that movie franchise holds a special place in my heart. So I am very happy to say this movie was as good as I thought it was going to be. Well, was better than I thought it was going to be. Anyways, thank you guys for joining the Copycat Movie Show. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.